Hummingbird cake, also known as Dr. Bird cake, is a pineapple banana spice cake with pecans and cream cheese frosting. If you like carrot cake, you are sure to like this popular southern layer cake of Jamaican origin. So let's get started. You will need flour and butter or nonstick baking spray for the cake pans, eggs, crushed pineapple, sweetened coconut, cinnamon, white cake mix, orange gelatin, bananas, pecans, and vegetable oil. You will also need two 8-inch cake pans along with both wet and dry measuring cups, a small knife, fork, and spoon, a large mixing bowl, a hand mixer, and a roasting pan for the bananas if they are not ripe. This is completely optional, but I want my cake layers to be as even as possible, so before I do anything, I'm going to weigh my mixing bowl. Although my bananas are ripe enough to eat, they aren't quite ripe enough for baking, so I'm going to have to roast them. So I'm going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees and then bake them on a foil-lined baking sheet for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, I'm going to take them out of the oven and flip them and then put them back in for another 10 minutes. Now we let the bananas cool while we butter and flour our pans. Start by taking some butter either from the refrigerator or room temperature, doesn't matter, and spreading it around all sides of a cake pan. Once the inside is totally coated with butter, take some flour, I'd say probably 1 to 2 tablespoons, and put it into the pan and then knock it around from side to side. This can be messy, so I suggest putting a plastic bag or a towel or something underneath you to catch the flour that falls out of the pan. If you have non-stick baking spray, feel free to use that, but honestly, I've always just buttered and floured my pans, and I haven't had a problem with my cake layer sticking. And after a minute or two of doing this, you might see that there are a few spots where the flour isn't completely coating the surface of the pan. So feel free to put some butter on your finger and put it into those spaces that need more flour, and then just put some more flour into the pan and knock it around. Once your first pan is done, move on to the second and do exactly the same thing. Rub butter around the inside of the pan, put in 1 to 2 tablespoons of flour and knock it around. Dump out the excess and you should have 2 cake pans ready to go. Even though we roasted the bananas at 350, we're going to bake our cake layers at 325. Our bananas should be cool enough to handle now, so peel them over a bowl. These are very juicy as you can see, so I definitely recommend doing this over a bowl. I only needed 2 bananas, so after peeling them, I mashed them with a fork and a measuring. I'm using 3/4 cup of mashed bananas, but you can use more or less if you want. Next, measure 1/2 cup of crushed pineapple. Don't drain it, you're going to need the juice, so just scoop it out of the can. Now that we have our fruit, let's start mixing everything together. In your large mixing bowl, add the cake mix, gelatin, pecans, coconut, mashed fruit, bananas and pineapple, and then the cinnamon. Don't forget about the cinnamon. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but I also like to add 1 teaspoon of coconut extract. I think lemon extract would be good as well since it is a tropical fruity cake, and the oil. And now 3 eggs. I like to crack my eggs into a separate bowl just in case, one at a time. And then once all the eggs are added to the batter, you can go ahead and start mixing. If you don't have a hand mixer or a stand mixer, you can use a spoon or a spatula. That's totally fine. Even though this next step is totally optional, I'm going to weigh my batter in my bowl and subtract it from the original weight of the bowl. Once I know how much the batter weighs, I can then divide by 2 and put about the same amount in each cake pan. But once again, that's totally optional. Just eyeballing it is fine, but I like to be exact. Once the cake pans are full, they go into the 325-degree oven for 27 minutes. Your oven may be different than mine, so I would recommend checking it after 25 minutes, maybe even 23, just to be safe. You know that the cake layers are ready when they pass the toothpick test. Insert a toothpick into the center and it should come out clean. If it comes out clean, the cake is ready. These layers are definitely done, as you can see, so now they're just going to cool in the pans for 20 to 30 minutes. In order to remove the cake layers from the cake pans, you will need 2 plates covered in plastic and a knife. All you have to do is take one of your cake pans and run a knife along the edge with the sharp side pointed towards you. Make sure that you go all the way around the cake pan. Once you've gone all the way around the cake pan, take your plastic covered plate, flip it over the cake pan, and then flip the cake pan over. Give the pan a quick shake and a tap, and it should come out pretty smoothly. Look at that. Very little stickage. Do the same thing with the second layer. It shouldn't be really problematic at all. If it is, just make sure that you shake the pan a little bit or maybe tap it with the end of your knife. But in my experience, this is definitely the best way to remove cake layers from cake pans. And now for the cream cheese frosting. For the frosting, you will need 1 8-ounce block of cream cheese, 1 pound of powdered sugar, quarter teaspoon of vanilla, an eighth of a teaspoon of salt, and 1 tablespoon of butter. Most recipes call for a full stick of butter, but by only using 1 tablespoon, I'm saving 800 calories. Once your cream cheese and butter are softened, just put them into a large bowl and use your hand mixer to blend them, along with the vanilla extract and the salt. After blending the cream cheese and butter together, it's time to add the sugar, no more than a quarter cup at a time. If you add too much at once, it will fly up into your face in a cloud. Believe me, I know from experience. Even though this part is tedious and time consuming, there's no other way to go about doing it. So if you're just starting out, you might even want to do maybe 3 or 4 heaping tablespoons at a time. And as I said earlier, I'm only using 1 tablespoon of butter instead of a full stick, which would be 8 tablespoons. It's a lot fewer calories, about 800 fewer, and no one has ever said that my cream cheese frosting was bad. So I think it's a good way to save calories without sacrificing taste. And now finally, all the powdered sugar is incorporated, and I like to take a spoon or a small knife and scrape the blades. Now it's time to frost and assemble the cake. Since the cake layers were taken out of the pans face down, all we have to do is put our platter face down over one of the layers and then turn everything upside down, peel off the plastic, and there's our bottom layer. Now we just put our cream cheese frosting onto the top of the first layer, smooth it out, about a third of the frosting. Then we take our top layer, flip it right side up, peel off the plastic, and simply put it on top of the bottom layer. And then just like the bottom layer, we put frosting on top of the top layer, and then we ice the sides. I don't have an offset spatula, so I find a small spoon to be best for this. I put some frosting on the edge of the top and then let it fall down over the side. And then I take my spoon, I turn it sideways, and then I either take it down from the top or back up from the bottom, the amount that's fallen over the side. Icing the cake could be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. If you want it to look really well manicured, then spend more time icing it or get a slanted spatula. But if you're like me and you want it to look nice, but it doesn't have to look perfect, then just do what I'm doing. And like I said earlier, I'm turning the spoon on its side and using slanted strokes to smooth out the frosting along the sides of the cake. Even though I'm not going to add any extra decoration, you could put some chopped pecans on the top or even on the top and the sides. A lot of traditional recipes call for that as well, but for me, just the frosting is good enough. I like to take traditional recipes and then make them a little bit healthier without sacrificing too much flavor. So, in my opinion, leaving out the nuts on the top, using less butter in the frosting, and only a quarter cup of oil in the cake itself, when some recipes call for a full cup, if not maybe a cup and a half of oil, are good ways to make it a lot healthier without sacrificing too much flavor. And now that the cake is iced and assembled, it's time to dig in. I like to cut my layer cakes as neatly as possible, so make sure that you have a knife and paper towels so that you can clean off your knife in between slices. But before I cut anything, I like to take a ruler and find where the exact middle of the cake is, so that once again I can cut as evenly as possible. I like to cut my layer cakes into 8 even slices, so I'll start off by measuring a quarter of the cake. I'll find the middle and then cut into the cake, being sure to use a paper towel to clean my knife before I make the second cut. Then I try to envision cutting the cake into fourths, so I try to find where that would be. I could use a ruler, but honestly, I just eyeball it and then I go straight down the middle of the fourth so that I can make a slice which would be an eighth of a cake. The first slice is always the hardest, so you may have to go back over your cut twice just to make sure that you've cut all the way through. Once you've cut all the way through the cake, take your pie server or the back of the knife and gently lift the slice up and out of the cake. Like I said, the first slice is always the hardest, but it's always a really cool moment when you take the first slice out of a cake or you cut the first slice of pizza. It's like the moment of truth. And here we have our first slice of hummingbird cake. Wow, that looks good, doesn't it? Once it's cut, you can see the layers very clearly. All of the ingredients, the pecans, the shredded coconut, the pineapple, the bananas, the cinnamon. Like I said earlier, if you like carrot cake, you'll definitely like this. It's basically fruitier, more tropical carrot cake. I put in a total of 1 1/4 cups of mashed fruit. So if you want to do more banana or less banana, more pineapple, less pineapple, maybe lemon extract instead of coconut, feel free to change it up. Although it's great on its own, it's great with ice cream as well. But honestly, it doesn't really need it. Thank you for watching my hummingbird cake recipe. If you liked it, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe.